and good afternoon, everyone. It is so lovely to have you here. I am Lucy, COO at Stribe, and thank you so much for turning up this afternoon. If you are new here, Stribe are an employee engagement survey software that is built to make sure you reach everyone on your team, including those who are dispersed or deskless. We help you understand how your team are feeling around topics such as mental health, well-being, and more. And we like to do things a little differently, which for topics like today's is probably not a bad thing, given that I think I can safely say we're all in agreement that there is still a lot of work to be done. And looking at things a little differently is sometimes the best way to make progress. We have had an amazing response to this webinar as well, so it's clearly something that many of you are thinking about for yourselves and your teams. This is only my second webinar ever, as you can tell by the little hiccup we've had already, so please bear with, but I am pleased to be back and seeing so many of you here, and it would be so great to have your support. The more energy we get from the chat and the Q&A feature, the better, and we really do value having this as a conversation. You are the most important part of these, so please do make the most of the features. I can see things ticking over really nicely already, so please don't be strangers. I can see there's many more of you on this webinar. Go ahead, introduce yourselves in the chat. Make sure you switch your messages to everyone, and please do share your role, where you're from, and anything that you want to get out of this session. And before I forget, also feel free to post your takeaways on social media. It always generates some really, really interesting conversations. And these sessions really do live beyond the hour that we're going to spend together. So it's well worth doing, and it makes the biggest difference to us to help get the word out about this mental health conversation as well. So we have got a really interesting topic to chat about today. Our guest is the wonderful Oliver Hopkinson from performance marketing agency Bind.
Morning, everyone.
We're going to be having a Q&A session about something that is really close to my heart, mental health. And one of the things that struck me when I was preparing for this webinar was the overwhelming number of mental health stats and facts and figures that are around these days. So whilst the conversation that we have today will be anchored in how we create workplaces where everyone feels comfortable to talk about their mental health and how we can bring about that change, at the end of the day, we are all humans, and the only way to really talk about mental health is to keep it focused on the human beings that we are. We'll probably weave our way through our stories, and we'll get personal, because for me, and I'm sure Ollie agrees, peeling back the layers of what goes on for the person who is on a journey with their mental health and how best we can provide that human support is far more powerful than going back over the same stats and facts we've all heard a million times before. So that's my introduction done. And I couldn't be more excited to be joined by our guest, the incredible Ollie. Like I said, he's co-founder of award-winning performance marketing agency Bind. That was a little bit of a mouthful. Bind, who boasts an incredible roster of clients, but more importantly, they also focus on helping their clients grow as people too. They really live their values, and they even have a guided meditation on bind.co.uk that you can access and do before you actually explore their site and learn more about them. I'm not going to give any more away because Ollie's own introduction will be much better than I could ever do, but I will say I can't think of anyone better placed to talk about this topic. Today is going to be a pure Q&A, so as I've said already, please do drop your questions into the box and get them in nice and early. We will make sure to prioritise as many as we can, so please don't be shy. So Ollie, first things first, how are you? And please just tell us a little bit about yourself, your work, and why you're so passionate about mental health.
I am very well today, Lucy. Thank you for that kind introduction. I'm about to smash it all to pieces myself and let people into my kind of world. So Lucy mentioned I'm co-founder of Bind. That's correct. Performance marketing agency, deal with all sorts of advertising challenges and data problems. But I'm also a dad. I have a 3-year-old girl who is my absolute world. I'm an endurance runner. I love running marathons. I'm a growth junkie. So anything where I'm kind of pushing myself outside my comfort zone, I absolutely love. And that's about it. That's who I am in a nutshell. Business owner, father. I'm a terrible husband, but I do my best, and a runner and growth junkie. And I am passionate about mental health. and I have been for some time. And it's not something that it's not something that I would have wanted to become passionate about, but I've kind of had to, because I suffered. I came into a position where my mental health was challenging. This was 16 years ago, and it's been something that has evolved. I've grown to understand, and I've helped a number of friends, family, colleagues throughout my journey by sharing my own experiences, tips of how to nip it in the bud, ways of managing it long term, and chatting to business owners about how to spot and put processes in place to help their employees and themselves in dealing with those kind of challenges. So it's something that I am passionate about, not by choice, but rather due to my own experiences, and I'm delighted to be here today, Lucy, to share with these lovely people that I can see in the attendance list.
Thank you. So we'll cut straight to it, because I know one thing that I know many folk on here will be interested in hearing about will be how you can recognize the signs and what they should do for their employees. I think particularly just having a look at the participants that are in the list, especially for those that are maybe working with remote teams, dispersed teams, and site-based teams, and maybe your own experiences of kind of being in the workplace whilst going through some of your own kind of experiences as well.
Yeah, for sure. So it's I feel that I have a unfair advantage because I'm a sufferer myself. I've dealt with it for 16 years. Anxiety, depression. I still take medication every day, 20 milligram escitalopram, which helps balance chemicals in my brain so that I can be on point and perform to my optimal. And given that I've gone through some of those experiences myself, it's easier for me to spot when I see somebody that is struggling and suffering. And that has never been more important, I suppose, in this world of remote working, because it's a lot easier to hide the signs if somebody that is struggling with their mental health, or they're starting to fall down that spiral of depression or helplessness. So I think that being in tune and talking to your employees is really important. Being vulnerable with your employees is really important. And the reason why I say it's my secret weapon is that everybody in my organization knows that I have depression, I have anxiety, and I talk openly and honestly about it through the social media platforms that I'm involved with. I will talk at conferences about my story to where I am now. And it isn't a secret that I shy away from. It's something that I embrace, and hopefully by embracing it and making it a superpower rather than an ailment, it allows people to feel more comfortable coming to me and talking about those challenges. Another challenge with identifying mental health is that no one wants to talk about it. And it's not just because they're scared, because they feel that if you have mental health challenges, you are weak. It's also the fact that it's really hard to describe how you're feeling. To put that into context, the way that my mental health challenges manifest themselves is the only way I can describe it is I feel like a ghost. I feel like I am a ghost of myself watching my own actions from a distance of 4 feet. And being able to articulate that that's how I feel probably took about at least 5 years of writing down in a book, how do I feel today? How would I describe it to a child? How would I describe it to a boss? And it became very difficult to articulate. And I think that combine that, the reason that it's difficult to articulate how you feel, and fear of being regarded as a weak-minded individual, can become incredibly difficult for men and women to talk to their boss about it. Being vulnerable, being well-informed as a boss and a leader in your organization will help break down those walls, especially of an employee feeling stupid, of saying, I feel like a ghost. I don't know how to describe the way that I feel, but I feel ghostly today. which sounds ridiculous, but if you can be empathetic with your staff and people within your business, it will make you more approachable for people to come and talk to you about their challenges. There's nothing worse than being and I've had leaders in my tenure of working for other people, when you've got a boss who never makes mistakes and is almost operates in a godly sense, who is a little bit untouchable. They are untouchable, and they burn through employees, because employees don't want to go and talk to them about their challenges, because they may feel that they're losing brownie points as a direct result.
I heard a really interesting discussion actually on the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphreys. I don't know if you listened to it, and they summed it up really nicely, because they talk about the idea that often people think that if you've got mental health struggles or problems, then you're weak or you're scared or you're unable to cope. And I think a lot of the time, especially when you're going through them, it's very isolating. Like you say, you're not quite sure how to describe it yourself, so you're kind of questioning what's even going on in your own mind, let alone then having to find the energy to bring someone into that as well. But what they're saying is, really, if you are struggling, you have to be strong to get through that struggle. And actually, if you're dealing with that struggle and daily life, you're much stronger than I think your mind and people give you credit for. And I
totally agree. And it's COVID, and you touched on COVID and remote working and how that brought everything back to the surface in terms of mental health challenges. For people that had been through or had learned to live with depression and anxiety, the pandemic was really easy to deal with. And I say that because for the 10 years before COVID hit, I had almost been thinking of disastrous things happening to me on a daily basis. So I was almost conditioned that, okay, the world gets shut down, and there's potentially this virus spreading throughout the world that's going to kill everybody. In my mind, I've been preparing for that eventuality every single day for the last 10 years.
Yes.
So the people who were challenged with mental health almost became the crutch for people that did not have mental health challenges, came to. And they said, how do I stop catastrophizing every single situation? And people like me, who had learned to deal with catastrophizing every single situation, from the stupidest thing, like I used to not be able to walk into a supermarket because I thought that the aisles were just going to collapse on top of me and I would die. That's just one of the hundreds and thousands of catastrophic situations that I would play out in my head through the noughties. But we became helpers. We became the strong people when COVID hit and the world got shut down, because we had envisaged this happening. And I know that it helped me in managing my team remotely when people felt lost, they felt helpless, and they didn't know how to deal with the situation, this new panic that had gripped the world. It allowed me to talk to them about it and help them through some of their struggles.
That's a really lovely way to put it. We do have a question that actually links in with what we're talking about now, and I'm so sorry if I get this pronunciation wrong, but I'm going to say Sachin. So they're saying, how do you deal with pushbacks and people judging you when you have mental health issues? And I do think that's a really important point to talk about, because a lot of the times, and you've touched on it before, that we don't have those conversations in work is because it's perceived as weak, or you're perceived as unable to cope. And it is a very real concern. I know that there are businesses out there that still have that. Oh, I said it right. Thank you. That's a relief. That do still have an environment that's very performance led and very kind of you kind of have to be viewed as strong. So how do you take that first step if there isn't already that culture there, do you think?
Okay, so there's two trains of thought for me, and one is quite personal to me, and one, I'll think about and see where this kind of takes me. But for me, if someone is dealing with pushback or judgment for having mental health challenges, I would run as far away from the person giving them pushback or judging them as possible, because they are not a leader. They are not a leader of people, or they're a very bad leader and a bad manager. There is absolutely no excuse in today's society for judging somebody for mental health challenges, and I accept that it happens. But for me, if I was starting my employment journey again and I told a manager that I was going through depression and I'd been prescribed antidepressants or beta blockers or whatever that may be, and I had that manager judge me, I would give them my notice immediately and say, have a nice life. I'm off to find somebody that does, that has empathy and an awareness of, something which is outside of my control. The second thing is, I personally, in my situation now, I don't really have people judge me. And maybe it's because there is this, and Sachin, I'm not sure if you are an employer, an employee, or if you do or don't struggle with mental challenges, but from my own experience of dealing with depression, anxiety, bipolar, is no one can judge me based on those things. And I think that because I almost normalize, or I hope that I normalize, that having mental health challenges does not make you weak. And I do that from being the hardest working person in the room professionally, by having this growth mindset where I want to continue to push myself to achieve things that are, that are tough, like with my marathon running and ultra marathons and charity fundraising and that kind of thing. I like to think that people will look at me and not think he has mental health challenges, he is weak, or he is not as capable or able as I am, who is a normal person. I like to think that people, that is an absolute nonsense. So what I would do if I was in a situation and I was being judged, but I didn't have the option of running in the opposite direction, is I may help educate the people that we're judging on what is mental health, because mental health isn't just having an off day. It isn't somebody that feels a bit low. It isn't somebody that feels hungover. It is somebody that has done something that has either suffered distress, drug addiction, or something that is mind altering, like grief, or post-traumatic stress. Something has happened with the chemistry of their brain, the cognitive maps that make up, that tell you how to respond to certain situations. So if you are in a dangerous situation, cognitive map may tell you to run as far as you can. When the chemistry is imbalanced in your brain and your cognitive maps are almost triggering different responses to a stimulus, there isn't much that you can do other than to work on it and to train your brain and to train your cognitive maps to operate in the same way that they have done previously. And that may be through cognitive behavioral therapy, it may be through medication, but I think that it's then becomes, if that person is too ignorant to understand that having mental health challenges does not mean that you're weak or incapable, then maybe the next step, if your options are, if running away is not an option, it is to try and educate them, say, listen, this isn't me being weak. This isn't me having a bad day, or, I can't just snap out of it. This is because I have a problem that I am addressing. Or maybe even not frame it as a problem, a challenge that I am addressing.
It's really powerful. And I think one thing that kind of came up in my thought process when you were speaking there is actually, kind of taking it back to the environment that they're operating in. I suspect there will be a lot of people in kind of leadership or management positions that do want to start having those conversations and aren't necessarily confident in their ability to handle it. And I know we kind of touched on that in the answer before, and I can see what Sachin's saying in their next question as well, about how many people are kind of going to wait until it's a matter that's more serious before taking action. So what would you say to those managers that want to start having those conversations with their colleagues? I'm guessing that you do that quite regularly in your team, but aren't necessarily confident for one reason or another about supporting that employee through whatever they say back.
Again, yeah, I do have a leg up on my competitors and other companies, because I feel that I've been to a very dark place with my mental health. So when I started my business 5 years ago, I decided this is something that every employee that joins our business, we are going to make sure that this becomes as important as their salary, making sure that they are looked after in a mindful way. So what we did was we stopped looking at employment in the traditional way of working 8 hours a day. And we decided that we were going to break things down into projects. So in one day, you may have 5 projects. Should take you 8 hours, may take you 10, may take you 6. And if you do it in 6, that's your job done for the day. You don't need to work the 8 hours. And we break things down into projects. And this allows people to be really flexible with the time. A couple of members of my team prefer starting work at 5 a.m, which I could not imagine anything worse. I will start work at 9, sorry. But they will start work at 9, they'll finish their projects, and then they're done for the day. They're not clock watching, they're not thinking about time, they're just thinking about getting things done, achieving things, not sitting in a seat at a desk for a period of time. We buy projects. So flexible work is really important for me, for my team. A lot of my team have kids, they have dogs. They like taking their dogs for walks. I'm absolutely pro that. If they want to go for a walk for an hour at lunch, or an hour in the morning, hour in the afternoon, or maybe 2 walks, so long as the projects are done before the next day, they can do whatever they want. I do the same. So I'm a keen runner, as I mentioned. I'll probably start work about 9 after dropping off my daughter at nursery. I will start running at about 1 o'clock, maybe do an hour, hour and a half, work until 4:30, go and pick up my daughter from nursery, play with her until she goes to bed, start work again at 8 p.m. until my projects are done. Next thing we'll do is we'll have unlimited holiday. This doesn't mean you can go on holiday all the time, because the project still needs to be done. But we don't have a fixed holiday allowance. And if someone is on holiday, it's just making sure that their projects are being covered by other members of the team. We invest in something that we call mindfulness, which is our little cheeky play on mindfulness, where everyone has a £50 to £100 to spend every month on whatever they want, so long as it is mindful. I'm just going to let my dog out, Lucy, because he's scratching at the door. Give me one
Go for it. We're flexible in the webinars as well.
Sorry about that. So people can spend their money on things that are mindful, and that is not prescriptive. We have one lady that works for us who spends it on audiobooks that she listens to when she's out walking. We have one individual who spends it on yoga. Somebody spends it on counselling. And the counselling one was an interesting one. I don't think that would have been something that they would have shouted about by saying, oh, I spent my mindfulness budget on a counselling session. But we have made it so normal to talk about the mind, and looking after the mind. It's as important as looking after the body. So we do mindfulness. We have the flexibility. We also have a kind of a body coach that is not just doesn't just write people exercise plans, but also looks into people's nutrition. We have this guy on retainer who works with every single member of our staff. It costs a lot less than people would think. All of these things cost a lot less than employment. It's just about making it all available. And
publicizing it as well, and talking about it, because I know that's a big difference that I've noticed over the last couple of years. We've had a few of those benefits that you've spoken about. We've got kind of CBT available through private healthcare and all of that kind of thing. And it actually wasn't until a few of us started talking about having accessed that and having done it and the value we saw from it, that people remembered and actually knew how to use it and went and did it. And the fact that it seems to be so ingrained in your culture that it's just as simple as asking for someone if they want another cup of tea in the office, you know, or have you done X, Y, and Z today for that? And it's a real holistic approach you have as well.
The mindfulness budget gets spent by everybody every month on whatever they want, and we don't write any rules. It just needs to add value to. It needs to be part of something growthy. So even if it's buying a load of books, go buy a load of books. You know, if they are, they can be fiction, non-fiction, doesn't matter, so long as they are stimulating your mind and looking after yourself. It can't be on, you know, like going out buying a bag of crisps or a new phone cover or some fashion. You know, it needs to be on how is this going to benefit you, and if you challenge it, they need to write a case on why this is going to benefit them in the long term. And the coach thing, that, you know, people say, oh yeah, everyone gets a gym membership. Yeah, but then they need to go and get their ass up and go to the gym. Having a body coach some people don't like the gym. Some people are not interested in that whatsoever. But this guy talks to every member of my team once every 2 weeks and just asks them about things like nutrition, asks them about steps. Some of them may be interested in fitness. And this all comes back to my own experiences of depression and anxiety. The things that I could control that helped most were nutrition, making sure I wasn't eating crap all the time. I know that would help my mind be more clear. Exercise helped me immeasurably. Just getting those endorphins going helped probably more than anything else. And there's a few other things like sleep, water intake. These were the 4 things that I always focused on. 2 of them are covered by some of the mindful activities that we try and do at Bind that are inexpensive, and the employees really like them. You know, they like it. They like that we are focused on this rather than just having a line written about it in the handbook.
And I think, one thing that I know that I struggle with, and you've just said all of that there, is you know, keeping that balance, keeping that nutrition. I know I ate horrendously yesterday, and I'm definitely suffering in my mind for it today. But you know, as managers, as leaders, as business owners, there is a constant battle and a constant struggle between the time it takes to do these things that you know are right for your mind and the things that are nagging from your to-do list. And I know one idea I had recently is actually that the idea of like this work-life balance, it actually puts another pressure on us as humans, because we're trying to get that 50-50 kind of perfect balance. And it's very, very clinical kind of way of looking at it, when actually something like work-life harmony is a better way to look at it, because it isn't necessarily about that even split of time that then puts that additional pressure and that additional kind of thought that you can like succeed or fail at getting a balance. It's just about making all of those areas of life that are kind of feeding each other in a productive and positive way kind of working for you. And I guess my question is, you know, there's so much, and I that you've mentioned there that you put towards kind of contributing to a better mental health kind of for you, but how do you kind of balance that as a business owner when, you know, there's pressures to have employee salaries paid, there's pressures to support your team in the way that they grow, and you've got pressures from clients as well, and you've got to do all of these things as well. It does sometimes feel like a never-ending list, right?
I think managers, directors, business owners, they do have a really tough job, because they're ultimately responsible for a team of people and responsible for themselves. I suppose my counsel to any managers would be that if you're not looking after yourself, your ability to be effective when looking after others is massively impacted. So I would focus on myself, and I do focus on myself first, because I know that I can do a much better job as a leader and as a manager if I am in harmony with my work and my home life. If I let myself get burnt out, I am going to definitely have a negative impact on my team's mental health. not just because I'll be grumpy, but people rely on me and other senior members of our team to help them with problem solving. And a manager being grumpy is like a Dementor in Harry Potter. They will suck the life out of the room and make everybody else feel poor. So to summarize, I think that it's important that managers, leaders look after themselves first. They do have a responsibility and duty of care to their staff and their employees, but they will be able to do a much more efficient job if they have looked after number one.
You've really made it sound like a no-brainer there. It really, yeah, when you put it like that, there's not really any other decision that you can make, is there?
I think it's managers do feel the pressure of looking after their team and making sure that everyone is okay. But I see managers all the time just completely burn themselves out. They are absolutely miserable in their jobs, and all they're trying to do is make people feel good, but it's killing them. And if you are somebody that wants to make mental health not a scary subject for people to talk about, and people start talking to you about it, it's challenging. It's challenging talking to somebody with mental health challenges who's trying to tell you about the way that they're feeling and trying to describe a feeling that is awful. It's going to bring you down. You need to be putting in these places and training your mind like a muscle to be able to react and deal with all these problems. Last thing you want to do is burn yourself out and become a Dementor.
Yes. So I do want to talk a little bit about how employers can kind of be more responsible and how your experiences have kind of changed the way that you built your business and things. But Vicky had a really interesting comment in the chat saying that she absolutely loves the sound of your benefits. Flexibility is key and creates that level of trust. And I think actually that idea of trust is quite interesting, because a lot of the benefits and a lot of the things that you've talked about so far in terms of creating that mentally healthy culture at Bind 100% rely on trust, right? Like I can't see any other way that they would work. So how have you managed that whilst you've been growing your team?
We've made mistakes in the last 5 years. We've made hires that have taken advantage of the trust that we put in them, and we've learned that it is the worst decision that we have ever made is hire quickly. Leads to poor decisions in terms of uncovering people's character. And it's not that these people are bad people, it's just that their personality type is not of a growth mindset. And some people can find it challenging working for us because we are so open. We don't operate like a normal business. We encourage people to bring their weird habits and their weird shit to work. It's a place of inclusivity, which some people find absolutely shocking. But yeah, we've made mistakes, Lucy, over the 5 years. My advice would be in recruitment is the most important thing in making sure that you can grow, and getting it wrong can almost be like a cancer in the team. It can be the most destructive thing, hiring the wrong person. And as a business, we have made mistakes that have cost us a lot of time, a lot of money, but at the end of it, we have learned from them.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I've learned over the last few years at Stribe as well, is sometimes it's better to not hire anyone, and there's a lot of bravery that you need to have to actually say, I did tell you we needed this role, but we just haven't found the right person yet. And actually having no one is sometimes better than having the wrong person in it. So yeah, that is a big one.
We're really fortunate in the position we are now, where we've grown the team and every single one of our team members are they are exceptional at what they do, and they are great people. Like, from a people perspective, they are all amazing. And that's what we hire for. Like, if we somebody that is culturally sound within our team, we can teach them the skills that they need to do their job. If they are not culturally sound, but they can do the job, they will no longer fit our our recruitment needs. They need to be culturally right. They need to be able to fit in with other key team members, and that has resulted in us changing our recruitment process, which is, I mean, if you asked any of our guys, Lucy, the recruitment process for Bind is awful. Like, it's so long and tenuous. But it's that by design, and it's because we've made mistakes that have been bad for the business and bad for the individual as well. Like, it wasn't fair for us to make some of the hires that we did. Nothing wrong with the people whatsoever. They just weren't right for us, and we made those mistakes, and we don't want to repeat them.
It's interesting, a really, really interesting point. So I think just moving on from that and thinking about, we've touched on a little bit of this, so I'll do a 2-in-1 question for you. But how have your experiences with mental health over the last kind of 15 or so years, how have they changed the way you built your current business? And what would you say is one of the most important things to think about when you're looking to create that mentally healthy workplace?
It's a tough one for me to answer, because when my mental health challenges started, I was 21. In fact, I was younger. I was 18. I was just finished my A-levels, and I had an episode at a house party that ended up me being in hospital. And from that point, when I was 18, I have learned to live with my mental health challenges through therapy, through medication. And I'm not sure how I would have run a business any other way than I do at the moment. Saying that, however, I feel that the advantages that I've had following my experience have allowed me to retain employees. They've allowed me to be able to be empathetic to any challenges that they're having with their mental health. And I think that the key thing that I have incorporated in my business by accident, it's not by design, because I wouldn't say I'm not an intelligent person. I'm just I'm quite intuitive. So accidentally, I was very open about my mental health challenges. I didn't think it was a big thing. I wasn't trying to be a martyr, or I wasn't looking for people's sympathy. I accidentally told a story, but it became the best thing that I've ever done. Not hiding that I have challenges, or being embarrassed by them at all. And I spent a long time being embarrassed, actually. It was actually up until the point where I started my own business, I was really embarrassed, because I was worried about judgment. Only when I had the confidence to think, either accept me or I don't need you in my life. I made the decision to start telling people and to be proud of it. So a happy accident. It's been the best thing I've done as a business, by talking to my team about it. It's allowed me to become somebody that they will come to if they are ever struggling. They will talk to you about coping mechanisms, about spotting the triggers that lead to breakdowns, or lead to somebody snapping, because it can just happen like that. Somebody can literally hit burnout. They will do one more piece of work and it'll snap, and it'll change life forever. And that's what happened to me when I was 18. I went a little bit too far, snap, something changed, and here I am at 36 years old, still telling the story about how there's a ghost over my shoulder watching me, and that is the way that I view the world. So being honest, being approachable, are the best things that I've done as a leader, and we've done as a business at Bind. We did it by accident. We didn't think that it was a particularly smart thing to do. It just happened, and it's been the best thing we've done to keep our employees hopefully happy, motivated, engaged, and coming back for more each day.
And it sounds like those 2 or 3 points, honest, approachable, and actually having confidence in yourself, are key. If you're a manager on this webinar right now that is thinking, how do I get started today? You know, I'm not in an organization that necessarily has that culture already, but I'm keen to be there for my team. I want to start these conversations. Actually, maybe one of the first things to do is just to start talking about your own experiences. I know a while back I was having a particularly anxious day, and Kieran, my CEO, he said, "Oh, how are you?" And I said, "Do you know what? I'm actually having a really anxious day." And you know, we had a little chat about why. And I don't know why I'd never done it before, but the moment I did, it just felt so much easier to then open up and have those conversations with the rest of the team. So I guess maybe if you're a manager that's thinking, how do I get started, finding someone that you've maybe got a more secure relationship with within your company, where you can have that first conversation in a kind of safer environment, and then move on to your team.
I think the hardest thing, Lucy, is getting people to talk. It's getting people to talk because they're ashamed, or they're fearful of being judged, or they don't know how to talk because they can't explain what is going on in their head. It's a real challenge, but communication is key, and it absolutely comes from the top. Comes from the top of the organization. Being vulnerable as a manager, as a leader, I think is really important.
Yeah, and another thing that I found when having conversations with my team about these types of conversations where they're opening up a little bit more, and my friends and family as well, is just asking them what they want from the conversation. Just saying, do you want to talk? Like, do you need to just get everything off your chest, or do you want me to give you advice? Because I know particularly over the last couple of years, when I've been speaking about some of the things that I've been going through, sometimes it's the first time that I'm acknowledging something, processing it, or forming those thoughts for myself, even, let alone actually having processed it enough to then know some answers for anyone questioning it or trying to help me through it. So sometimes it is just that simple act of being heard. And I think as managers, a lot of the time we put pressure on ourselves to have answers, and sometimes they're just not needed in those conversations, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I've got a couple more questions, but if anyone has any more questions, please do pop them in the Q&A chat. We've gone through the couple that we've had so far, but we will probably be moving on to them in a second. So let me take a look here. What do you think you would say? So we've talked a lot about kind of, if you're in an organization that doesn't necessarily have a talking culture already, or you know, if you're not confident to speak up, we've talked about perhaps that's a red flag and you need to move on. But what would you say to folk that are trying to bring kind of everyone on this journey of creating that kind of talking environment in work? So, you know, I've decided I'm going to be the mental health kind of champion within my organization or my team. I'm really keen to see this through. I love the organization I work in, but there are still some folk kind of up to the side of me, down to me, that aren't necessarily bought in. Is there anything that you've kind of got some tidbits of advice for, to give me the gumption to then go and make that change?
I think that knowledge is power in this situation, and really doing your homework on, if you haven't experienced mental health challenges, anxiety and depression, do research on exactly what it is, how people feel when they go through anxiety or depression, and how it is different from, you know, than just connecting it to a hangover, for example. And then getting buy-in from the top. And the top is probably more important than your peers or people that work below you. Getting a senior figure to join you on this quest to normalize talking about mental health, you're much more likely to get engagement of people below. So yeah, 2 things would be: do research, understand as much as you can about how mental health affects people in different ways. My experience is depression, anxiety, bipolar. There are other things, OCD, other things that you may want to have a look at and understand, and then trying to get somebody senior to join you on the quest, so that your peers and subordinates don't feel silly when talking about it. Maybe, and the other thing as well is to have a communication platform where people feel safe. Whether it is anonymizing emails, sending out Google Sheets, whatever that is, people may not want to put their name to feeling like a ghost right away. They may not want to talk about suicidal thoughts with their name next to it in case they are being judged. Communication, buy-in, and education.
I guess part of it as well is starting to build, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the webinar, I guess a awareness of how people will react. So if you do know there's 2 or 3 managers within your business that are comfortable talking about it and do have a confidence with that topic, sometimes I think the fear of talking is often because you don't know how that person is going to react back, and actually building up some knowledge in your employees of the managers that are there to listen and are kind of your mental health and well-being champions, and building up that understanding that they are there and they will kind of help you and listen to you as well, is always a really big thing.
I think that the main takeaway for me, or the main point, is that it's really easy for a business to say, we have a mental health champion, we champion mental health initiatives. But do you deeply understand what some of these people go through that are going through these challenges? Or are you posting on your intranet that we destigmatize, we do not have any stigma against mental health? Do you actually understand what it is? Because I've seen a lot of businesses that take that point, but have they met anybody with mental health challenges? Do they understand what the side effects are, and if it does in fact affect their productivity, or is it a tick box exercise? I like that and I'm sure that there are people in this forum today that are suffering. I do not doubt it whatsoever. I think that more people suffer from anxiety, depression than are comfortable enough to share with the outside world. And I understand, I'm with you. I've been there for 10 years. I would not tell anybody about the way that I was feeling. I think that businesses, it's time for their mental health champion to really deeply understand and put a case forward to get buy-in from the top dogs in the business that they work within, so that your peers and your subordinates do not feel stupid going to them and talking about how they're feeling, because we're in a world of uncertainty that has been absolutely nuts over the last few years. I feel that people that have been on this journey for a long time have been okay, but there will be a new batch of people. There's a new batch of people that are sat behind their screens feeling helpless and not understanding the thoughts that are going on in their heads at the moment. And it's only going to lead to one thing. It's going to lead to further challenges around suicide, or around a real mental health breakdown in society, because people are still afraid to talk about it. And I don't blame the people. I do not blame the people that are suffering. I blame the managers in the organization that are not taking it as seriously as they should, and the government for just ticking boxes that they are championing mental health initiatives around the UK. For me, it isn't good enough. I don't know why my back's up about it, and I've gone into passionate mode, but it's one of those things that really does get to me.
No, I think it's so important. We're in a massive world of change right now. There's a lot of funding changes going on in the health service, which I we definitely don't have time to go into right now. You know, the support structures that were in place are no longer in place. There's more people than ever kind of recognizing the need to talk, and workplaces are a brilliant structure to do that, but to do that effectively, we really need to ingrain it into the workplaces, and to do that we need to make sure that we're shifting that view that, like we said right at the start, that you're weak if you talk about your feelings, or you're weak if you talk about having a mental health problem. And you know, that I think that is kind of the first step, is changing that view of, you know, you can't cope and they're not strong enough. And because I know when I've had anxious days, dog coming back in, I know when I've had anxious days, that doesn't necessarily correlate with me not being able to perform in my job. It's very different things for me. And oftentimes, actually, sometimes work is a better thing. And I think if people treat you like you need to be wrapped up in bubble wrap, rather than trusting you to understand how you need to move through your own day, that can make things worse. So I guess we need to wrap up. I can see a lot of people saying thank you and how they're having to move on to final meetings. But Ollie, is there anything you want to kind of say as a conclusion to what we've talked about today?
Just thanks for the opportunity, Lucy, to talk. Thank you for all the hangers on that have managed to put up with me for the last 40 minutes or so. You know, it is something that I care a lot about, and thank you to everybody for listening.
Well, thank you so much, Ollie. And again, as well, thank you from me to the folk at home. You've made today so freaking awesome. And I'm really hugely grateful, Ollie, to have had the conversation with you. It's been brilliant. And for everyone still with us, you will receive a little email from us that includes a link to the recording of this webinar and a couple of links to resources that will be useful for you that the team at Stribe have produced. I'll also share Ollie's LinkedIn in the follow-up email as well. Please do pop him a thank you message and share any questions you may have for him. He's really open to having any kind of conversations that you're wanting to have beyond this webinar. We also really love hearing takeaways from the webinars. So like I said at the start, please do share them on LinkedIn, social media. If you do, tag us, or feel free to email us as well. They genuinely do mean the world to us, and we do want to keep having this conversation. I think if there's one thing I've learned from today, it's that change definitely does take time as well. You know, we're talking about this. Ollie's been on this journey for over a decade, and workplaces have been talking about this for a long time. But I think the goal that we take away from this webinar will be different for us all. Some of us will be thinking about the way we can approach mental health conversations with our team. Some of us will be thinking about how we can bring leadership in, and others will be hopefully introducing something very similar to mindfulness to our teams as well. But I think if there's one thing we can look at, it's that it's going to be a long journey, and it is easy to feel overwhelmed. There's so much change to do and still to be done, but just trust that it will come, and take each step as it comes, and you will always get a little bit closer to that end goal. And we just really hope that we've given you some of the ideas for that first step today. So thanks so much again. We really look forward to seeing you all on the next one, and we will let you know when that's been scheduled as soon as we have got it confirmed. So thank you so much, everyone. We're signing off now. Have a lovely day.